Hello, Ellie McGrath. Welcome to the Happy Days podcast. Thank you for joining me. Before we get into it, do you want to just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure thing. Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Ellie McGrath. I'm 23. I'm from North London, and I host my own podcast called Practice Makes Progress. As we know, the usual saying is practice makes perfect. And growing up, that was something that I very much struggled with, that kind of expectation to be perfect. I couldn't make mistakes. I feared making mistakes. I thought asking for help was a weakness. And so my mental health journey, I guess, has been nearly 10 years in the running, but I think it's been in the last sort of 3 or 4 I've really faced things head on. So that's kind of, the podcast is really part of my recovery, and it's trying to tell my story, kind of normalize stuff and destigmatize. And I kind of have guests on, they share their story, and we're kind of all in this thing together. It's just trying to get through life and learn from it and kind of grow from it. But in addition to that, I have a master's in public mental health. I'm training to be a sort of young person's mentor at the moment, and I'm also going to be a peer support worker soon. So kind of living and breathing mental health at the moment, but I really enjoy it. So yeah, and thank you for having me on today.
You're more than welcome. That sounds so interesting. I didn't know about that, the fact you were studying and stuff. That sounds awesome. Props to you. It's really, really cool. You're clearly very sort of passionate about mental health and stuff. Where's that kind of come from for you? Obviously, you've been through your own journey, but as you say, you kind of live and breathe it.
Yes. So it's literally a reverse. So growing up, I very much hid what I had been through. I hid the voices inside my head, because I was just kind of trying to keep up this facade that I had everything together and that I was perfect. And when I sort of had a breakdown at uni, I mean, I sort of struggled with other stuff before then. But when I broke down at uni, it was very much like, people are going to know now that I'm not perfect. Like I'm gonna have to admit it, not only to myself, but to other people. But the weirdest thing that happened was like, nobody treated me any differently. If anything, they liked me more because I wasn't trying. They got to know this real me. And actually, when you share what you've been through and you connect with other people, and that's why, I've studied and I'm doing the work I'm doing, because that power of like human connection, when you say something that in your head you've internalized is so scary and no one's gonna like you or love you, and that can be further from the truth. Obviously you're going to get people that don't understand it, and that's fine. And it was in my final year of my undergraduate degree, so I did politics and philosophy, and I was doing this module called Bodies and Beauty. And basically at 14, I had gained a little bit of weight, and some girl in a PE class pointed out my stretch marks to me, not knowing at the time that they were very normal. And sadly, I was just sort of given some bad advice to adopt this really restricted diet. So age 14, my world just became about food and what I looked like and trying to achieve this ideal. And I never really opened up about it. But then I got to this final year module. So that's what, like 5 years later. And I realized that like this thing I was feeling, it was kind of bigger than me. And like, it wasn't just me who kind of felt this pressure. And there was like people that had studied this, and it was sort of real. And I think that kind of validation, even though I wasn't ready to talk about it, just knowing that other people got it. So I kind of explored the impact of Instagram usage on body satisfaction. I did this dissertation, did the survey, like 600 girls filled it out in like a day. And it was like, so we're all kind of sitting at home feeling these same things. Yeah. And I think the reason I love TikTok personally so much is people are realizing now, like, they've never had an independent thought in their lives. Everything that you felt, someone else has like felt at one time. And that was amazing. And I think that just sort of showed me that other people got me. And that's sort of, led to the masters. And I realized, wow, there are places for looking into this stuff and people want to try and make change. And that's I've found that path down that way.
Yeah. What do you hope to do then in the future? You just want to help people with mental health as much as possible. Is that the goal?
Yeah, I think particularly like young people, I sort of say like my sort of life mission, I guess, is that 14-year-old me who was just very lost and didn't really know, what she was worth and didn't like herself very much. It's trying to just, so I know so many people of my age group now that kind of like are doing that. We're almost working backwards. We were kind of sold this way to be, to look, who to love, how to dress. And we've gotten to this point now, we're realizing we don't need to live like that, and we can make our own decisions. And so for me, I kind of want to like empower people from as young as age as possible, that they don't need to fall into these binary categories. You can just like be yourself and be proud of who you are, and sort of save yourself mental health problems because you're trying to be something that you're not. You're trying to kind of live for other people. That's what was like the main. That's the main.
Yeah. Is that where it comes from then? Because as you say, like so many young girls are suffering from the same kind of thing that you went through. With guys, it's slightly different areas of the mental health conversation, I'd say. I mean, in the same way, we all struggle along the same things. We all live very similar lives, right? But guys put on a different kind of facade. Whereas with girls, I feel like a lot of the time, I mean, this is massive generalization, but a lot of the time it's about body image, right? And stuff like that. Is that because of the social conditioning that we go through when we're being raised? Is that what it is?
I would say so. I mean, and I think the other kind of, but I think what's normalized for girls is almost to talk about those things and have those emotional chats. And so I think there's almost like that kind of double load for guys, which is you might be struggling, but it's not really masculine or normal to say, hey, I don't like my body very much. It's not kind of a typical narrative. And so even though it's weird that girls are put in this box to struggle, the weird benefit of being in that box is that like you're able to talk about it a bit easier. That's again big generalization, but that's what I from talking to people have kind of discovered. But yeah, I mean, me and my friends talking about the other day, you know, when we were in year 9, obviously started going through puberty and all that kind of thing. We just remember, you know, with like boys just blatantly objectifying us, but it was this really weird thing where it's like you almost wanted to be because you didn't want to be left out of that. You know, I remember people had like their top 3s, and you know, when people started like, I don't know, like changing, and like people were like, I mean, I don't have like I mean, I don't know how explicit I could be, but I don't have like the biggest chest or whatever. Definitely at 14 I didn't, and I was always like sad that like I wasn't kind of being objectified and kind of just seen to be a body. But yeah, so you just realize like how young that stuff starts. Like we remember being 12 or 13 and being told like what features were our best by the guys in our year, and it's just comments that like are kind of said to you. And I guess through studying I realize now, in terms of like your brain development, those ideas are so powerful because they really do kind of like they stick with you. And so if you're just kind of made to feel that you're existing to be good looking, you it's really quite hard to unlearn. So I think, yeah, and I just, yeah, we definitely grew up in that generation where you just saw like ultra thin people on music videos and TV programs. Everyone was white. Like it was just a really kind of like toxic, I don't know, kind of aesthetic, I guess, to follow. But body image is hard because you don't want to spend your life hating your body. It's a big weight to carry, pardon the pun. So yeah, if I can help people, then that would be amazing.
So how did you start to overcome these kinds of issues and struggles that you were going through? Where did that begin?
I would say in my second year, because even though I sort of gained weight back, but I mean, anyone listening who might have been through the same thing, that doesn't equal recovery. You know, you have to be mentally better. You can't just be physically better. And I think that's also just the common misconception with eating disorders. You know, it's almost like if you're underweight, anyway, there's just, yeah, loads of misconceptions. But it was that breakdown in second year, I think. And then I had actually applied to do a year abroad before this. And I'm so grateful for it because I went over to Melbourne, and the cheapest way to kind of live there is to share a room. So I actually had 2 roommates, and I never met either of them before. They were both at Bristol. They kind of knew of each other. All the 3 of us spent a year in bunk beds together, and that year was so kind of like poignant, I think, for all 3 of us. But it all kind of, again, it goes back to that, like once you share something you've been through and you're met with me too, there's just this, I can't explain what happens, what magic is, but that I credit a huge ton of my recovery to, because again, I'd been through that point where I had to be honest now what I've been through, and they were just so helpful. And also when you're sharing your living space with 2 other people, you kind of have a responsibility to them, you know, not to be an asshole all the time and not to just be moody, and actually you kind of have to be conscious of them. And then throughout that year, you know, getting more comfortable with talking about what I've been through, just met so many people that said they've been through it too. And I was like, why are we not talking about this stuff? So I took it upon myself, I guess, to start having these conversations. And I think like a lot of people, the pandemic saved me. because I didn't really like the way I was living beforehand. And something like the podcast, you know, it was so kind of validating and important that I just got that sense, that self-esteem kind of kick from other things that weren't my appearance, weren't my diet. You know what I mean? So it was almost like I was letting go of this old me, and I was just growing into this just like better person. And I kind of had to learn something new, and I had to learn something better. So I would say it's really been like the last 3 years, I would say. But probably the pandemic, again, you have so much time where you're just with yourself that I feel like I'm facing a lot for the first time. So yeah, anyone listening, I actually had to do some counselling service as part of like my recovery at uni. So I had 6 sessions. Anyone's been to a counselling session, you know, you are doing the talking, they're not doing the talking, and you just have to sit there. And unless you want it to be silent, you just start rambling. And again, you're with a trained professional who's probably had this all before and wants to make you better. So I would say talking, as we've learned from this podcast already, I don't mind talking. So I would say I would credit that with like a lot of my recovery.
Yeah, I think human connection is kind of, and like, of course, we all know how important socializing is. I feel like we've learned that from the pandemic, but genuine human connection on topics that you both align with, you know, like your tribe. I think that is there's as you said, there's something really, really powerful about that. And even, you know, even away from mental health, even just talking about just general personal development, which I talk about on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's through talking to other people that are on a similar journey to me, in which I found the most growth for myself. And I mean, of course, if you relate that back to the mental health topic of conversation, the mental health sort of area, if you're, you know, finding your tribe with other people that might be going through the same thing, you will grow together and you will raise each other up, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Do you find that you kind of like you root for each other a bit better? You know, you kind of
Yeah.
like you make those connections. And I don't know about you in terms of like what social media you use most, but so I rarely use my personal Instagram now because it's no disrespect to anyone I grew up with or anyone I went to uni with, but it's very much that kind of like seen to be a certain way. Whereas my podcast Instagram, the feed is just so wholesome and everyone is just being honest and like they're telling each other about their day. And you're right, it's finding that tribe and finding that community. And it is really helpful. And you're right, I think during the pandemic, we just learned that more than anything, how important those connections are.
And how important your content diet is as well, right? I mean, I've done exactly the same. I've got a personal Instagram and I've got a professional one, I suppose, you know, like a podcast one. I purely just follow people that actually add value into my life on the professional one. And whereas on my personal one, it's full of a bunch of people that I'm not even friends with, really. I just know them, you know, a bunch of people who, frankly, no offense to the people listening, but I don't care about your lives, you know. And as you say, it's all a bunch of people putting up a facade, looking to be happy, looking to be sexy, looking to be, you know, successful, whatever you want, you know. And it's not sharing the true, real, you know, core of it, sharing the struggles along the way. And I think that's something which you do great on your page. I remember when I first saw your page, I loved it because it was so open. And it's just a community for people, like we said earlier, a community, a tribe for people to align with. So
100%.
powerful. And personally, when I was going through my mental health issues, which weren't ginormous, but I certainly struggled. And I think everyone struggled. It doesn't matter if it's big or small, you're still struggling. So you have to deal with it, right? I struggled a lot with like anxiety and stuff like that. And when you're going through something like that, you feel like you're the only person in the world who's doing it. You know, you do internalize it. And your brain just starts playing these tricks on you because you're so anxious. You start telling yourself all of these complete lies, like, oh, these people hate me. Oh, I'm a loser. And the more that you do that, the more you create a prison for yourself in your own brain, you know? So that's why I thought your page was awesome, is because that's the key to unlock the cage, you know?
It's honestly, I couldn't have put it better. And your brain lies to you. You know, that is something, learning that now, I'm just like, wow, you do just tell yourself lies. And you're right, it's so easy. And I think mindset for me has been such a kind of, it was something I never really understood before. I think I'm really in for this year. And now I so get it because I'm very much someone who like, if I feel sad, I kind of seek out sadness. And that's something that I really had to kind of like I guess, become really self-aware about. And I think that's the other thing about self-recovery. You have to realize that like you've been wrong in many situations, you know, you've gotten things wrong, and actually I need to throw out certain beliefs because they're not adaptive, they're not helpful. And that's been hard because you're kind of like, so who am I? But I think what I do pride myself on my page is like, again, it's not every day is going to be easy. You know, some days there was like a stretch where I had like a really great month. Then I had like my first like rubbish day. And you kind of you hate that this like streak has ended, but you realize that's normal life. And I think it's also just normalizing that for other people is super important. And again, that's why I love TikTok. Like you want like one thing, your For You page just becomes like all this self-development stuff, and you're something that you felt before someone else says, and it's such a powerful thing.
Yeah, and you know, like you said, mindset is massive. I mean, that's personally where it started to shift for me. When my life started to shift was when my mindset shifted, right? I kind of use this analogy all the time, and the listeners would have heard this before, but I think of it like your brain is where your life plays out, right? You perceive all of your senses and it puts it together in a beautiful film, I like to say. Your brain is like a projector. It's playing it on the screen, and you're sat in the audience, you're experiencing it, you know? Your mindset is like the lens of that projector. The film could be totally fine. The projector is totally fine. But if that lens is cracked or is blurry or something, the whole film's going to come out screwed, you know? So it wasn't until I started to shift my mindset where I took my previous mindset, which was I'm a loser, you know, the world's against me, you know, all of this negative stuff. And I shifted it for a more positive one where I was actually like, no, Callum, actually, you're all right, you know? And then your life changes because, like you say, you pick out all of the different pieces which validate your belief. So if you believe you're a loser, your brain is going to find all the reasons why you're a loser. If you believe you're awesome, your brain will find all the reasons why you're awesome. So powerful.
It's so powerful. And it's like, we get this one life. Why are we going to spend it internalizing that we're a loser? What if we're not? And you're right. Like,
what
life
if?
just, but then you know, and for me, I found like affirmations and gratitude. That's something I only started doing the beginning of this year, and that just trained me to think more positively. And again, it's like when you're open to good things happening, more good things happen. Or like, I'm in a mindset where I put myself out there, so you never know who you might meet, what they might bring, the situations you might find yourself in, the opportunities that arise. It's and anyone listening, like, I know that's really hard. Like when you're in it, finding that strength to think positively is really, really difficult. But honestly, like, it's so kind of heavy and draining to just be in that place. And again, for me, it is just like practice. Like, I didn't just wake up one day and I was like, I now think I'm sick, I can't wait for this new life. Like, it is very like, it is a lot of work and it is a lot of commitment. But you're working on yourself is just like the most rewarding thing you could ever do. And at the end of the day, you can't really change anyone but yourself. And I think healing is like almost taking back that control and just being like, okay, that's happened, but I don't need to be defined by that, and what else is out there. And I think having that shift of mindset has served me like really, really well.
Yeah, taking responsibility for myself was quite big for me, because that's the point where you are in control. You know, if you sit there and you think the world's against you and everything's happening to you, I mean, you're not going to get anywhere, because you won't be able to shift your mindset. You won't be able to pull yourself out of that, you know, that place. But if you take responsibility, then in that point, you know, in that slight change of wording or thought pattern or whatever, that is when you can, you know, that's when it's in your control, because it's in your responsibility, right? And it is very hard. It's incredibly hard to do this. I know, you know. But once you just make that first step and you start trying to shift it and try and point out the positives, each and every time you'll condition yourself to do that, you'll start to change the lens, you'll start to change the mindset, and it gets easier as you go. It's like any kind of conditioning, you know, if you try and run a marathon, you're going to suck at it, right? But if you start running a little bit and then running a little bit further, you get better and better, and then soon you can do the marathon.
Yeah, 100%. And anyone listening, like, I felt so silly. The first time I did affirmations, I was like sitting in my room. I was like, am I really going to say this out loud? Like, I hope no one's listening.
Yeah.
And now it's like my favorite part of my day, because it's just like me and myself, my own little like lane world. And I love it. And so, yeah, it is. It's practice makes progress. No, I'm kidding. But it is, yeah, it is just kind of repeating those things. And yeah, and just getting to know yourself a bit better. Like, you might try something, it doesn't work, that's fine, at least you tried it and now you know. But it's putting yourself in that mindset where yeah, you're open to those things. It's super helpful.
So if you could say one thing to someone who might be struggling with something right now, if you could sort of summarize that in a sentence or two, what would you say to them, do you think?
To not blame yourself. A lot of these times it depends whether it's just you're having like a mental health blip or you have a mental health illness. If you have a mental illness, that's to do with like a chemical imbalance. Okay, it could be hereditary stuff, so please kind of like take that pressure off yourself. And it's not to like invalidate what you're feeling when I say that chances are someone else can relate. That's not to kind of say your problems aren't unique and specific to you, but it's just knowing that like we live in such a world that we've been fed so many ideas. It's so much about like luck, where you're born, who your friends are, where you've grown up. A lot of the time, like, you don't really know what you actually think, because a lot of the time you are just kind of like a product of stuff. And so I think if you are struggling with something, please know it's very, very normal. We're only just realizing now how important mental health is. So we still don't really know the depths of our brain and how these things are wired. But I know it's really hard to do, but just be kind with yourself. Speak nicely to yourself. And if there's a program you can watch, a podcast you can listen to, a page that you can read from, I mean, if you're very lucky and there is a person you can speak to, write it down. Just try and like get it out somehow, because for me it was just like the longer I held it in, the more ill I got and the longer it took to get better. And that's why I really want this like parity between like physical and mental health. It's like when you feel yourself catching a cold, it's almost like when you feel those little things bubbling up, just if you can have some kind of outlet where you kind of your safe space you can go to and you can get those out somehow. But yeah, just massively like, do not hate yourself. Do not think that you're never going to get better. Do not think it's just you. We live in a really, really difficult world. And there are people out there who do want to help you, I would say.
How do you get it out? What's your outlet?
Oh, I have a few now. I'm not gonna lie. Music is a huge one. I have dance parties like on my ones like all day long. It is very like main character vibes. If I'm like walking along the road, I need the good music. I love running, so I actually started running recently for a charity kind of challenge, and now it's actually become something that I love. And I think exercise doesn't have to be running, it could be yoga, it could be whatever. But I think when you see that progress and that strength grow, you kind of show yourself what you can achieve, and something that seemed impossible, you're now doing, and you're almost like setting that next goal. And I think it's showing yourself, you build up a resilience, and feeling kind of physically stronger just helps me feel mentally stronger. I think having go-to people sounds really lame, but I really do love logging online, but specifically TikTok, and just seeing other people. Like, I just love knowing that like I'm not alone. So I think they're my go-tos, I would say. And my journal. I love journaling.
I can relate to the first two a lot personally. I have many dance parties on my own in my room, looking like a total wally, and I hope to God that no one ever catches me doing that. But genuinely, it does just raise your vibe like incredibly. And it's a tactic which I kind of use whenever I feel like I'm in a bit of a negative space at the moment, or need to pick myself up, or I'm not happy with myself or whatever. I'll just put some positive, happy music on and just look like an idiot, but just enjoy myself, and it really works. It's crazy.
It does, because you're just taking yourself out of this headspace for a bit. You're showing yourself that you can laugh and you can be silly, and it's like, you need those breaks from your mind sometimes, I think.
yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, that's been awesome so far, and thank you for sharing everything so far, Ellie. Let's touch upon sobriety, because this is something which you've spoken about on your page. It's not something I've spoken about on the podcast before, and it's partly out of curiosity to find out more. But it's also something which I might try and take up myself.
Mm-hmm.
So why sobriety, Ellie?
So, like a lot of people maybe in the UK, I grew up drinking quite a lot. I thought binge drinking was quite common. My family definitely do, and again, no shame to them. So I just grew up thinking that drinking a lot was really fun. Like alcohol was just synonymous with fun, and it was the answer to everything. Hard day, drink. A great time, drink. And that's fine, you know, for a lot of people. But I think as I kind of got to like adolescence into uni, and I guess I was hiding this inner me that was actually very sad, very lonely, very didn't like herself. Alcohol gave me an escape from that. So kind of going back to, I guess, what I now get from my dance party, you know, if you are someone who has 1,000 thoughts going through your brain all the time, and a lot of them are very self-critical, having a drink, it seemed to quieten those voices, because I wasn't beating myself up. I was being fun, Ellie, which I'm not saying I'm not fun without it, alcohol, but it was just, and it became a coping mechanism. You know, it's kind of like with anything now, you know, if you do something for long enough, it just becomes so habitual. And I think I was kind of always known as the person who would pass out, who would always be up for another one. And I really thought that was just my personality. And then obviously we're all in lockdown, and I moved out, so I've had to move back to the pandemic. But I was like drinking on my own, you know, through Zoom or whatever. And then I got sick twice, and it was almost like I wasn't learning, and the universe was going to like keep showing me, you know, unless I sort of took control of this. And then I think it was after the second time I got sick, like the next day, and I remember looking at myself and thinking, I want better than this. Like this is grim. So last year, 2020, I stopped drinking for 6 weeks, which was great. And the podcast was taking off, and I felt so much more productive, and everything was going great. I started to drink again, not kind of excessively. I think there was only, I'd say, maybe 2 occasions towards the end of last year, which I did. But then the beginning of this year, I went through a breakup, which I wasn't expecting. And I kind of just said to myself, like, I don't want to deal with it in the way I usually do. I don't just want to re-download Hinge and drink my way through this. Like, I kind of want to face this. And so I did. And so I'm now 5 months. And I think it's been very interesting, because I say you face things, but that means a lot. And I think actually I've never really spoken about my kind of, I guess, bad relationship with food really before this year. And I think not drinking has just it's taken me back years, because it's almost like I've basically gone back to the age I was when I started drinking, which is really, really weird. And I'm kind of, yeah, there's a lot. But I sleep better, my fitness is better. I look after myself better, and I can say that I did it for me, and I'm not kind of relying on something. I'm not hiding anymore, which is really, really nice. So that is why sobriety.
Has it been difficult at all?
Massively, particularly socially. So obviously I say I'm back at home, and my family, as I've already said, you know, drink a lot. So it's very much a kind of like, that was something like I very much suddenly felt I couldn't do. And hanging out with them, it is different, because I don't want to just sit around and drink anymore. And so that was difficult, because it was kind of like I felt like I was losing kind of certain relationships, and I felt quite lonely, you know, particularly now. It sounds really silly, like on a Friday night I now volunteer for a homelessness charity. And it's just weird to think that, like, me, you know, 18 months ago, a Friday night would have been like, you know, where are we all going? So it's been an adjustment, and it's been hard to remember why I'm doing this at times. It's hard to kind of get comfortable what is good for you, even though that looks very, very different for other people. I think that's been a huge kind of like overarching theme. But once you kind of get over that initial bit, it does become easier. And I think I've had like my go-to people that I can speak to. But yeah, I think it's just, again, it's taking that first step. You know, it's really difficult to say it out loud. Once you do, nothing changes in terms of like people looking at you differently, because that was the one biggest, because I don't really know many people that talk so openly about being sober or struggling with their relationship with alcohol, you know. So it was very much like I was putting myself out there, and I had no idea what people were going to say. but people have been great, so that helps.
Good. Yeah, I think it's kind of because we have such a drinking culture here in the UK that when people start to struggle with that, like heavy drinking and stuff, or just drinking at all, it starts to almost put a bit of a negative light on that drinking culture, which I think everyone knows that drinking isn't particularly a great thing for you. Everyone knows that, but I think we are trying to sort of live in this kind of I guess it's another facade really, where drinking's good for you and stuff, which I suppose in a certain, like, for socializing it can be, and it can, like, in moderation always, but yeah, I think that's kind of where that sort of taboo topic kind of comes from.
Massively.
About quitting. Yeah, because it's something I'm thinking about at the moment, because I'm at my worst when I'm drunk, always. I mean, it kind of, I think maybe that's pointing out the obvious or something, but I'm always at my worst when I'm drinking, and I do like to have a beer at the weekends. And I do love beer. I do like trying new beers and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, I can't tell you how much I hate being hungover, or how I detest the feeling of what happened last night. I hate it. I can't, because that's when I'm out of control, and I do live my life, or try to live my life in control. I think I'm in control of where my life's headed. I'm in control of me, myself, who I am. So when I don't know what's happened the night before, that's a horrid feeling.
It's awful, and you're right. It's the I don't know if anyone listening, most people might have heard the term, but like the hangxiety, it's just like you try and like put the pieces back together. And you're right, particularly when you're kind of, your daytime life is, you're trying to kind of lead this life where you're very in control, and everything sort of like, you get it, to then kind of have your inhibitions go, and then the next day you're kind of picking up the pieces. It's just such a horrible, like, for me, like, hangovers is why I stopped drinking. Like the anxiety, the berating myself, the criticizing, it's just so grim. And so what I actually say to people, I'm like, it hasn't been 5 months since I've had a drink. It's actually been 5 months since I've been hungover. And I think the productivity that I feel, because I just couldn't get anything done when I was hungover. Like I just wanted to like just sit there and wallow. And it's just so awful,
same. Yeah. How do you sort of manage the socializing side of it then? Because I guess this is the only thing that's really stopping me from going sober, is because I want to have a laugh with my mates. I want to, go meet someone down the pub or something. Or so how do you manage that? Do you still go but just stay sober, or because that kind of scares me a little bit?
No, I completely get it, and I was the exact same. I guess it helped. It's interesting, so I feel that now, because when I first stopped drinking, it was January, so it's like pubs weren't open, it was dark at 4 p.m, so it was kind of like it was fine to kind of, people just wanted to go on walks anyway. And so I think what's helpful is I kind of started it back then, so it feels quite normal now. But once it started getting warmer and things were opening up, I would just say to people, do you want to go get food somewhere? So I would like find like a market, or find like somewhere I really wanted to try, and just trying to like navigate it towards something that you could do without drinking. And it helps that none of my friends are like, would ever pressure me, and it's not as if they need a drink either. So I've just been kind of, I guess, quite lucky in terms of like, no one has sort of been like, oh really, come on, type thing. If I just suggest a walk, no one really kind of questions it. And I guess a lot of people kind of question their relationship with alcohol throughout the pandemic. So I don't find that, at least in my circle, anyone's kind of, rushing to a pub so much. But it is, I've definitely gone, and like I've been through for a few dinners, and there's just that time where like things get funny, but like only if you're a bit tipsy. I just kind of use that as my cue to go home. And also I'm also just quite tired by that point, because it's probably like 11, 12, and people don't say anything either. So yeah, it is quite difficult to manage, but it's quite rebellious to kind of go and do it, and then you feel better for it, and just being around people that get it, I think has been I would say is the biggest thing.
Have you been to any sort of like parties or anything like that since going sober?
I've been to one, which was fine. I guess it is quite daunting when there's like big groups of people and you sort of know you're not going to be. But again, it's kind of like choosing wisely. If you're going to go somewhere and you just know that you're going to like hate it the whole time and you feel like people are going to be talking about you, or again, there's voices in your head, and skip it. If it's someone's birthday and you're really, really close to them, just explain and just say, I will take you out, just you and I, another time. I hope you have a great day. Yeah. And again, I think putting those things out there and judging people's reactions, if people don't respect that boundary, then that's on them, that's not on you, Yeah. So I would just get comfortable with saying it, and once you say it once, it gets easier.
So would you sort of steer clear of sort of the parties and that kind of thing, or would you sort of approach it sober and then maybe just dip off early if it's not really the kind of thing?
Exactly. I make a decision. And also what I tend to do nowadays, because my friends take me for it, I am quite bad on like, I'll make a plan and then maybe close to the time something comes up. So I usually just say, can I see how I feel on the day? And that's kind of code for like, I don't want to commit now and then disappoint you. And I don't want to, kind of get in my head about it kind of too early on from the event. And then people sort of respect that. But I've been for a few times. It's nice. And I think also because we're coming out of lockdown, people just want to kind of catch up and whatever else. But I think I just feel comfortable now and like setting those boundaries, knowing when to leave, and that's been fine.
Nice, cool, awesome. So let's move it on now. What would be your advice for young people? I mean, what are some of the key pieces of information you think that young people need to know?
Nobody has their life together. Like nobody has. Nobody knows what they're doing. We are all just working it out as we go. There is no timeline. There is no cut-off period to do anything. That for me, learning that has been so key because I just was so stressed about what I was doing. And it's not like that at all. And also even just realizing that my parents are just older than me. They still make mistakes, they don't have everything figured out. And I think that for me has been like the biggest lesson. And I think if you can get comfortable with find out what you enjoy as well. Life is way too short to be doing stuff that you don't enjoy. I learned that way late. I know people that were at uni who didn't really want to be, who were studying something because it sounded good rather than they actually cared. And so I think kind of just start asking yourself, what do you enjoy, and can you make that happen? And if it isn't paid yet, that, again, money is not motivation for me. Start volunteering. I have gotten so many more like cool opportunities from just starting out. I'm sure it's a podcast as well. Like, start doing things that you love because you want to be in a space with the right people. And things will come from that. Genuinely, they will. That's what I think I would say.
Yeah, I mean, man, when I was incredibly anxious, one of the main triggers for that would be the fact that everyone at college was asking me, what are you going to study then? What's your plan? What job do you want to do afterwards? What are you going to do with your life? Who do you want to be? I'm sitting there thinking, I don't bloody know. I've got some of my friends going off to study dentistry and all these other things, and they've got it all planned. They're going to uni and all this kind of thing. And I'm just kind of sitting there thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do, And when you pair that with some of the other stuff that anxiety brings, that was terrible for me. But the fact is, no one knows what they're doing with their life. Not even your friends that are going off and doing these things. Do they really want to study dentistry? I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's paid well, right? And it's like, just think about it. Like I mean, I started working at a recruitment company doing like content and stuff, and that kind of got me an insight into people's careers and patterns and stuff. They go all over the place over their lives. Like, who's going to live their whole life doing the same thing every day, right?
Absolutely not. And like, that's the thing. It's also, you get sad because you don't have something, but when you actually really break that down, you don't want that either. So you're kind of getting sad of like, you're getting sad you don't have a life that you don't actually want. I think that's been the biggest thing. Again, like, society kind of tells you what you should be doing or what's valued. And I think comparison is it's a really, really difficult thing to kind of master and manage, because by nature we just do. But you have to remember, like, I live my life because of things I've been through, by same for you. So it's just not an equal comparison. So just do what makes you happy. And I know it's such a reducive sentence, but like, the rest will come.
Yeah.
Not saying that it will never be bad, and that's another big lesson that I think I would say, but it's just have that trust in yourself, I think.
When people ask me that question about the advice for young people, or just advice in general, what would be a key piece of advice, I always say, like, follow your heart, because every time in which you follow your like inner intuition and stuff, or what you truly want to do or feel like doing or makes you happy, that's when the good stuff happens. Like, I've had an incredibly privileged life, incredibly privileged upbringing, right? I mean, I'm living in the UK. I'm a white male. I've got no complaints, right? And my life was all right, but I can't tell you how much better my life has been since I started this podcast and started working on myself and stuff like that. Like, the people I've met, the conversations I've had, the more authentic I've been myself. And I mean, all of these great things, gratitude, everything's sort of come into my life, and it's just made it so much more whole and positive and, content and stuff, So that's what I say. I say follow your heart, which is kind of similar to what you said. And I just think it's really powerful once you start doing things that make you happy.
Definitely. And also, just again, both those pieces of advice is actually quite simple. You're stripping everything back, and you're kind of just like, you're going back to you. And I think in this, again, in a society that's just, if you're kind of bombarded with stuff, it's quite nice just kind of go back to that relationship with yourself, work on that relationship with yourself, and kind of get comfortable with, what do you like? I don't even know.
Yeah. What do you think makes a happy, fulfilled life? Would you say it's more or less the stuff that we've just spoken about there, about the key piece of advice?
That's the thing. I don't know, because again, like when you say that privilege stuff, I did all the tick box exercises. I got good grades. I went to uni. I've had relationships. It's just like I sort of did all the things that are supposed to make you happy, and they sort of didn't. And I guess what I'm learning now is I'm finding things out for the first time. But I think what I guess I've always kind of cherished is that social connection, is that kind of feeling understood by people. And I think a big thing for me now is making a difference. And again, going back to that kind of, I just want to look after my little like teenage self. But yeah, money's never really been a huge motivator. I think to be fulfilled, it's just like something that actually just stimulates like my brain and my emotions and like my heart and everything. If I can just come home and just feel like I've made a difference, like really, that brings me so much fulfillment. And it doesn't need to pay well. It doesn't need to be known by everyone. It can just, I can just have saved someone, I guess, to an extent.
That's why I always say at the end of my podcast episodes, leave me a message on Instagram, because I'm sure you'll know, with podcasting, everyone sort of comes up as numbers and you don't really get that real connection. And let me tell you, the best thing ever is when someone sends me a message and say, hey, Callum, this episode really helped me, thanks. Or, hey, Callum, this was really powerful, thank you for sharing, or something like that. Like, that is what I do the podcast for, yeah.
It's amazing, because and I know, because I've been in that position where like I've been really, really struggling, and something that someone says is just like completely just made me feel like at ease. And I don't know what it does. And you're right, like the fact that you are doing that for other people, honestly, for me, you can't. I know this is 2 podcasts here, but like you really can't beat that for me.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So let's wrap it up now. I've got one final question for you, Ellie. It's a lot of fun. It's a super subjective, super cliche question, but as I say, it is always a load of fun to ask people. So tell me, Ellie, what's your meaning of life?
I think I just want to explore.
Yeah.
I want to like ride this. I just want to ride this wave, and I want to make mistakes, and I want to learn, and I just want to see what's out there. I think I really want to just put myself in situations. I want to put myself out of my comfort zone and just kind of learn from other people, and be a bit more informed than I guess I was. I want to keep learning, basically. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah.
No, it's a good answer. I mean, for me, I think I don't know if it's my meaning of life, but I always follow growth and the new, and finding new things. So I think exploring and learning and growing, I think that's an awesome way, and it resonates with me. So Ellie, thank you for sharing. where can we find you online? You know, all social media, your podcast, everything like that. Let us know all the details so all the listeners can get connected.
Sure thing. So it's Practice Makes Progress _pod on Instagram. That's probably where I post. That's sort of where I just post like my sort of day-to-day little tidbits. It's Practice Makes Progress on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever else, also a Facebook page. But yeah, come follow, come join the tribe. And just thank you again for having me. This was, such an amazing conversation. So thank you.
Listen, Ellie, it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you hopping on. So cheers for that. And it's been a great episode.
Nice, thank you.
So there you go. That's the end of the show. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe on your podcasting app of choice so you can download and listen as each episode is released. If this episode helped you in any way, tell your friends, tell your family, maybe even leave a cheeky review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show. But that's all for now. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode, released shortly. Take care.